Where's the chapstick?
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Today I'll be discussing the Skyrim Civil War. I'm going to focus mostly on which outcome would be best, rather than the two sides and their beliefs. I'm going to be using all my knowledge of the lore to explain myself, so this video will be mostly factual rather than soaked in opinion. I'm going to assume you know the most basic lore, but as I come to a more esoteric topic, I'll go into a bit more detail so you can have a full understanding. After spending the past 13 years of my life studying Elder Scrolls lore, and after looking at the Civil War from an objective point of view, it is this lore master's opinion that the Stormcloaks are obviously the better choice. The Empire has its advantages, but I'll discuss those a little later. Firstly, let's look at the Stormcloaks' advantages. Hammerfell is against the Empire due to part of the White Gold Concordat giving the Thalmor part of Hammerfell. The Redguards weren't asked or consulted about this. The Empire just sold them out. There are strong feelings of resentment for the Empire, and especially the Thalmor and Hammerfell. If Skyrim is an independent nation, it will have more trade opportunities with especially Hammerfell, but also every other country except for Cyrodiil and maybe Black Marsh and elsewhere, at least until the Aldmeri Dominion's wiped out. But with how skilled the smiths are in Hammerfell with their Orichalcon metals, and how skilled the farmers and builders are, Skyrim can get most of what it needs from Hammerfell, High Rock, and Orsinium. As for how the Stormcloaks could beat the Aldmeri Dominion, Hammerfell will likely join the Stormcloaks if they ask for help, since they hate the Empire and loathe the Thalmor. Hammerfell has sword singers. If you don't know what a sword singer is, think the Ebony Warrior. Stone wizards, Orichalcon weapons, and even freaking cannons in Stros M'Kai, as seen in Elder Scrolls Adventures Redguard. Not to mention they've already fought the Thalmor to a standstill and drove them out of Hammerfell after the Empire tried to sell them out. Combine these forces with the Dragonborn and all of the Stormcloaks, including Ulfric himself with his powerful Thu'um trained directly by the Greybeards, and the Thalmor don't stand a chance. This brings me to my next point, the Dragonborn. Everyone forgets about him being an asset to whichever side he's on. Let's assume that whoever the Dragonborn joins is who will win. After all, that's what happens in the questline anyway. The Dragonborn has the power to control dragons with the Bend Will shout. The Thalmor would have a lot of trouble dealing with an army of dragons, along with a Thu'um-wielding warrior with the soul of a dragon. If the Dragonborn DLC is to be believed, the last Dragonborn becomes the servant of Hermaeus Mora. The Dragonborn could get help from this Daedric prince the same way Miraak was given a shout to bend the will of dragons. This would prove a considerable advantage for whatever side the Dragonborn is on. It would be very difficult for the Thalmor to defeat something as powerful as a Dragonborn, especially one backed by a Daedric prince. Even Ancano, a high-ranking Thalmor wizard, even when superpowered by one of the most powerful magical artifacts in existence, the Eye of Magnus, was beaten by the Dragonborn. This is also why the Thalmor's navy wouldn't be able to mount an attack against Skyrim's northern shores. I'm pretty sure an army of dragons won't have much trouble with a collection of wooden boats. Also, the College of Winterhold doesn't like the Thalmor, since Ancano killed the Archmage Savos Aren. The College saw firsthand how evil the Thalmor are, so the Stormcloaks would have extremely adept mages in Skyrim on their side. This, combined with the Stormcloaks' proficient use of guerrilla tactics used against the larger Empire during the Civil War, could prove very deadly. We have to talk about Talos, but don't worry, I'll keep this succinct. Basically, gods get their power from their worshippers. If no one worships a certain god, that god is essentially removed from the mythic. This is the Thalmor's goal. They want less and less people to worship Talos, as Talos protects humans. If Talos worshippers are killed, Talos' protection over humankind gets weaker and weaker, thus making humans easier to wipe out completely. The Aldmeri Dominion's goal is a complete genocide of humans, so that the elves will be the only ones worshipping Auriel. This is why they went after the Eye of Magnus. Unmaking the world would allow them to exist in a stasis before time, and thus walk as Auriel, and thus ascend to godhood. That's how godhood works in the Elder Scrolls. It's called mantling. So basically, the Aldmeri Dominion want to ascend to become gods. And as an aside, we know Talos is a god. Praying at his shrines grants a divine bonus, and you literally talk to him, or at least an aspect of him in Morrowind, known as Wolf. Now for the aftermath of the war. The Stormcloaks have repelled or destroyed the Aldmeri Dominion. Again, Dragon Army, Daedric Prince, Redguards, Cannon, Fazorda. Seeing that Talos worship is legal in Skyrim, it's possible that a lot more, Talos worshippers will immigrate to Skyrim. Many of Tamriel's population who want to freely worship Talos will move to Skyrim so that they can worship Talos. This will strengthen Talos' protection of humans and will also supercharge Skyrim's economy. This obviously would be beneficial to Skyrim. Also, Talos worship is legal, thus more people worship him and humans are more protected. With the Aldmeri Dominion gone, eventually the whole continent will come to worship Talos again. Except for Elsewhere, Valenwood, Black Marsh, and Morrowind. They have their own pantheon. Lastly, for the Stormcloak side, let's talk about Ulfric. Defending his cause isn't too hard if you know the lore of who he is and if you apply logic to what you've seen in the game. Ulfric was considered by the Thalmor to be an asset. That doesn't mean he actually is anymore, especially since the elves that he hates were present at his intended execution and are killing all humans. Ulfric did not murder High King Torygg. He challenged him to a duel and won. Ulfric is not staging the rebellion just so he can be king. It's actually the other way around. He wants to be king of Skyrim so the Empire will take him seriously. He believes in the cause he is fighting for and wants the Empire to notice that Skyrim does not agree with what the Empire has done. Those are my points for why Stormcloak victory is better overall, but what's an argument without looking at the other side? I've read thousands of lore threads, and it seems the majority of people support the Empire. I've discussed why Stormcloaks are the better option, but I'd also like to talk about why the Empire isn't as good of a choice as most people think. The Empire has been weak for a while. The Medes are in power because the Elder Council is able to financially control them. Well, at least the first one. The second one wasn't so much, which is the whole reason we were ordered to kill him in the Dark Brotherhood questline. Basically, the dynasty has a history of doing whatever others tell them to. Not exactly a strong government. The White Gold Concordat meant the Thalmor are able to wipe out humans not only with no opposition, but with the Empire actually helping them in doing so. Some people have problems with joining Stormcloaks because they're racist, or Ulfric is racist. Firstly, Ulfric has never said anything racist. There's no evidence that he is. Argonians work the docks in Windhelm, sure, but that's because the city refuses to hire them for anything else. That's not Ulfric's law or anything like that. Torbjorn Shattershield treats them poorly and underpays them, not Ulfric. Torbjorn is the racist one here. Ulfric has more important things to worry about than two Argonians being unhappy. Now, the elves are a totally different story. There's definite racism in Windhelm towards the elves. But let's remember what elves are doing. The Thalmor are roaming the country committing genocide. I can forgive Windhelm for disliking the race that's killing your entire race and spitting on your way of life. I know the Thalmor are high elves and not dark elves, but this is a matter of elves versus humans. My last point is a combat-related one. This is why the Empire won't be able to defeat the Thalmor. I've never heard anyone bring this point up, but there's a treaty in place. The Stormcloaks don't care about the treaty. When a treaty is broken, large-scale war happens. The only resolution is one side has to be wiped out. Some Imperial soldiers support the treaty, others dislike it. The whole Empire won't join the fight, since not everyone will be willing to break the treaty. Cyrodiil especially won't break the treaty. But what would happen if the Empire defeated the Thalmor? After all, they had the Dragonborn. Well, they wouldn't even make it that far. Let me explain. If the Empire wins the Civil War, the Stormcloak Rebellion gets eradicated. The Thalmor immediately move into Skyrim, since there's no more opposition to their campaign. Countrywide ethnic cleansing ensues. Every Talos worshipper is killed. Talos is no longer protecting humans. The Thalmor systematically begin killing all humans they come across, as that was their plan to begin with. At this point, the Empire take notice, and best case scenario, attack the Thalmor to stop them. The Thalmor have already beaten the Empire once, and that was in Cyrodiil, where there are way more Imperial soldiers than in Skyrim. Skyrim's Imperial forces wouldn't stand a chance, but the Dragonborn would. Well, for a little bit. The Dragonborn is powerful, but I doubt he could take on the entire Aldmeri Dominion. Their army numbers in the thousands. Sure, he could take out a decent chunk of them, but even he would eventually fall. If only he had all of Hammerfell's army behind him. I personally believe that a combined force of Hammerfell, Skyrim, Stormcloaks, and the Mages of Winterhold can defeat the Aldmeri Dominion, and they'd be better off doing so. However, a disjointed empire would have no chance in driving off the Thalmor. Let's also remember that Hammerfell has already beaten the Thalmor, whereas the Empire was unable to. As far as lore goes, all the most relevant information has been taken into account and presented here. After taking this information to the lore thread, I've changed a few people's mind about the Civil War's outcome. At the end of the day, who you pick doesn't have an effect on gameplay, but if you're into role-playing and want what's best for the game world you role-play in, a Stormcloak victory has a much better outcome. Thanks for listening to me ramble.